And I'm sitting here in these very comfortable chairs with Marian Call. Welcome, Marian.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great.
Yeah, how are we?
We had a big event yesterday, but
We
I feel
did.
like anyone you're talking to can usually say that.
I
On
don't
any
know
given
about
week,
yesterday,
probably.
but yeah, what did we do yesterday? Alaska Music Summit number 4 in 2023 in Juneau.
The Alaska Music Summit has always been statewide, and Juneau has consistently sent 2 or 3 people, to go. Sort of our hardest hustling musicians have often figured out a way to make it there. But being someone who's not in Anchorage, it's always a mission of mine to draw statewide content into our other cities in addition to Anchorage, because Anchorage, it's easy to get Anchorage centric, it's true everywhere, right? But a statewide conference, I love the idea of it rotating. I love the idea of it including, the whole state, especially when a music summit is going to be for a lot of people who are not going to have a budget to travel for it, right? So canceling it for a couple of years for the COVID break was something that was inevitable, but what's interesting is that break also kind of gave us the technology and the ability and kind of the widespread public Zoom knowledge and proficiency
How many people
to make it
attended
hybrid.
yesterday? We had about how many people in the room and how many people?
We had 65 people registered in person.
Yeah. And I think they almost all came. Almost all of them came. And then we had up to 50, 55 people, I think, online, maybe more.
Most of the time, but they were shifting. We had over 100 people registered for online. So I think it would be different people at different times
At
a day.
any given time, about 50, so about 100. So that's great. So about 150, 60 people to this Alaska Music Summit.
And hopefully we've captured some of it to share later, which is something we have tried to do before, but it's hard to do. I think this time we have a better shot at sharing some of that material afterwards.
Yeah, and you were really in part the person who were kind of designing the content and programming it. And from what we can see from the schedule and everything, and what I can remember from all that happened, it was kind of 4 main focus areas, I think. So we talked about maybe in no particular order. We talked it was sort of a musician's toolbox a little bit.
Yeah, kind of by artists, for artists, stuff you need to know.
Yeah,
if you're a musician,
And then we talked about data on music, and I want to come back to that a little bit because there was kind of an avenue for you also talk about the work that that is being done right now with surveying the Alaska music communities and music industry, if we can call it that, the sector, and then we talked about festivals. And
kind of music and community venues, like the spaces we gather for music and how those impact our communities. That was really, that was cool.
And funding, money.
Yep.
So 4 great sort of talking topics. I don't know that we'll focus on each of those sort of tremendously structuredly in this hour, but I wanted to kind of touch on different things that you care about in your work with sort of professionally as a community organizer, and also hear a little bit about you, Marian Call, the musician. So, in fact, I want to start with Marian Call, the musician then. So I remember you coming up here. It's almost 20 years now since you came to Alaska. For the first time? Or
I visited once when I was in high school, and then I unexpectedly moved here in 2003.
I
was not expecting to, and was expecting to stay only 1 year, only 2 years, because it was kind of economic hardship that drove us up here at that time. But I wound up really falling in love with it and really seeing a future for myself here.
And writing songs about it. I remember I have some of my favorite songs, and Marian Call's love songs to Alaska, so that's good.
I have about 10 times. The ratio is like 10 to 1 love songs to Alaska versus other love songs.
Okay.
So.
Well, that's good. It's a good sort of platonic relationship to indulge.
Yeah.
And then you became, in my perception, a real role model for musicians who wanted to go out kind of on their own. The indie musician, I think, is you sort of embody that in the sense that you found different ways of making a living, and I hope a good, decent living, or indecent living, I don't know, but as a musician, and also not by running around playing big concert halls or whatever, but showing people, demonstrating that house concerts and smaller venues and partnering a lot with radio stations. I think you're really good at working the radio angle, and then you helped other people figure out different income streams.
Yeah, that's been a mission of mine. My parents are both teachers, And actually my step-parents, my whole family is just rife with teachers. And so it feels like, even though I've never felt called to teaching as a profession, that whatever you're doing is really only worthwhile if you can also help someone else do it, right? So
I feel exactly the same way.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's just,
totally.
I love doing it, but if I can't also like, oh, whoever's in the room, let me help you figure out also, here's my process. You can duplicate it. Here's the parts that apply to you. Just take it and run with it. That was always, even when I was just starting out, that was something I was interested in sharing. And the nice thing was I had like 12 years of running around touring really hard, making a lot of the kind of mistakes you make, and growing in a lot of the ways you grow when you do that. And at the same time, trying as much as possible on the way to spread whatever little bits of knowledge I gleaned so that other people could skip a couple mistakes, right?
You always seem to me to be a good source for, this is what people are talking about right now. I know this, that you seem to be really on top of the trends and the right trends. You make a lot of smart choices and things like that, in my judgment. And
I think the smart choice is it has very little to do with trends and has a lot to do with knowing yourself, right? Like a lot of the mistakes that I've made have been in not knowing myself and the venue, or like not knowing that I wasn't good fit for a venue, or not knowing my audience well enough, or not knowing that this was a good direction and that was a bad direction for me personally, right?
Yeah.
And so the advice I would give other people is not go play more house concerts. The advice I would give other people is, are you matching well with your venue, with your audience? Are you thinking of creative spaces where you meet the people who want to hear you? And for me, because I do like acoustic, talky comedy, very lyrical, like people who don't listen to lyrics are not going to be as into my music, and that's like 90% of the population. So I've got my little niche people over here who want to hear every word. At first, I tried to do the very typical Alaskan band circuit, right? Like I was like, okay, I'll go play like Trapper Creek Music Festival, and I'll play these festivals, I'll play those venues, I'll see if I can get a set at Coots, and like that just was not working. It was really sad, and I felt awkward. I still feel awkward about probably some of the interactions I had, which was nobody's fault, but rather just a mismatch of like, I'm not some of those cool kids. I really like a lot of the kids who do that stuff. I love hanging out with them, but I just am so awkward in the wrong setting as a musician. And so I went and found my setting, and that's like the same thing that any musician can do to their advantage,
Definitely.
So.
And it is a big enough, a lot of people say, oh, Alaska is such a big state with so few people, but we're also at the same time surprised of how much is going on. Whether it's tiny, tiny town or the bigger cities, there's almost always much, much more going on than any brain can contain, and just it's a lot going on.
I was worried when I moved to Juneau from Anchorage in 2012 that I would be bored, or there would not be as much entertainment or not be as many gigs. And oh my goodness, no, it is so. In fact, it's worse because more people, and so there's always every night. There's one of your friends is involved in a thing, and you have to go there and you have to be there and it's really busy. And my favorite part of Alaskan entertainment in general is, we do a little bit for the tourists, but mostly we're doing it for ourselves.
Oh,
and
definitely.
That makes it, to me, there's something so much less pretentious and ladder climby about the way that Alaskan entertainment happens. It's really, we are entertaining ourselves, and it feels that way, and it's fun. Like I have spent a lot of time in LA, New York, Austin, Seattle. I've recorded in all those places. And they're great, but it always feels like they're
being something.
Yeah, they're being something because someone's watching. There's an imaginary Truman Show going on where someone could be there and discover them and watch. And I'm just like, that's fine. I enjoy the folks there. I enjoy the place. There's kinds of music careers you can have there that you can't have here. So I get it. But also when I come back here, I'm like, oh, finally, I'm playing a show, not for some magical eye in the sky that's going to make a difference in my career. I'm playing for my people, and they're here because they want to be here.
Yeah.
And like,
we're playing
it's
for
just so
ourselves
much more
as well.
straightforward.
Yeah, you're doing
playing
it
for
you.
ourselves. Yeah.
So you have put a lot of time, and lately an awful lot of time, into working for the music community is your natural tendency to want to bring people along with you, and that's brought you into now being, in the lead of some of this organizing work for AKIMI and for other organizations or other initiatives that you're working on. So one that I know that is close to your heart, and it's in fruition, I should say, at the moment, in full bloom, is the playlist project.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you want to just talk a little bit about what it is first, and then how you kind of fell into doing it.
The Alaska Playlist Project arose out of the current music business environment and trying to figure out what to do with it. Streaming has really, really, really changed the math for musicians. I think we all are dealing with this. I know that because every time I get in a room with other musicians, or every time I did before COVID, for those 5 years, 2014 through 2019-ish, every conversation I'd have with other musicians was, have you figured out what to do that's not a CD? Like, have you figured out, for a minute we were trying vinyl, but vinyl's so expensive and so big and so breakable, like that was not really working for most of us. And have you tried USB sticks? Have you tried pretty art cards? Have you tried t-shirts with a QR code? Have you, and just like nothing works in place of a CD to sell an album physically. And online album sales have just essentially dried up. And for me, at least, when I was touring, selling albums at the end of the night is like 30% of your income, right?
Absolutely.
And nobody's figured out how to replace it,
Enduring.
And,
it's an art form that then had to kind of stop. It was put to death very quickly.
Yeah, it vanished. And I mean, I get it. We went from like tapes to vinyl to cassettes for obvious reasons. They're a lot smaller, they're a lot more durable, right? We went from cassettes to CDs.
Idea.
CDs have this great fidelity and, we're supposed to last, although they too deteriorate after a while, which is hard to hear. And every time physical media changed before, it was replaced with another thing you could purchase. But, and even CDs were being replaced by digital purchases, right? And everyone thought Napster was the big threat to us, but no, Napster created this kind of glorious, like, indie music revolution that it was infused with tons of money pouring into more people than ever before. But streaming has really put an end to all that. And now there's very much a generation of young music listeners who have never paid for an album and never plan to. And I don't think that's a thing that is going to be easy for us to fight as a social shift. I don't think we're going to get a lot of leverage fighting it. It sucks. It's hard. I have spent some years pretty depressed about it. But there are new assets. There are new opportunities, and playlisting is one of them, right? That's the thing that has happened now, is there's so much music to listen to and so little curation, right? And the curation is important. Like, I'm terrible about going out and finding new bands. I want to listen to my same familiar records that I love from, I'll get stuck on a record and repeat it,
Going back to that, I was here in Juneau at the folk festival quite a few years ago, and the guy there who's selling records still, he is saying it's a human. It's a digging motion, he said.
Yeah.
It's like the animal in us who wants to dig, and we want to do this in the record store.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten past the digging motion in a record store, but the virtual digging motion and kind of trying to figure something out, it's a very difficult thing to do.
Oh, yeah, and digitally doesn't quite work. Like, we've all done the Netflix, like scrolling through Netflix for so long that we don't want to watch anything anymore because there's just so many options.
Fall asleep totally exhausted, not having watched a movie yet.
And musically, the same thing was happening, right? Yeah. But playlists are mostly possible on Spotify. They are possible a few other places, but Spotify has really cornered the playlist universe. And Spotify is also one of the worst places as far as paying artists. But Spotify is where my grandma's listening. For now, right? Spotify is where my mom has an easy time listening to music. Spotify is where the public is at the moment. That can change. It changes every 5 years, I feel like, right? It can change.
Don't tell the Spotify people that. They want to be it forever. Anyway.
Yeah. Good luck to them. Have fun with that, having jumped from platform to platform. But they have allowed playlisting, and that is something where I feel like they've been taking advantage of artists for so long, and I was so upset about it. I didn't stop to think, well, fine, how can we take advantage of them? How can we use the thing they built for our purposes? Because that is, to me, more productive than a boycott is to look at the new systems that are exploiting us, because there have always been systems exploiting artists, to look at the systems exploiting artists now and go, okay, all right, so that's where we're at. How do I use this in a way that they didn't intend? How do I use this to elevate the people I care about? How do I use this to elevate my scene and to make things better for my people? And the Alaska Playlist Project is how we do that, right? I got the best Spotify Wrapped this year because my #1 listened category was called Alaska Indie. They invented a category algorithmically for what I was listening to. They weren't tracking artist locations until the last 2 years. I think they didn't really allow you to make like a bio on Spotify until the last couple years. So they didn't know where artists were from particularly. I'm sure their AI had some idea if people were writing songs that had the word Klondike in it or whatever. But they now are recognizing that regions have musical pride, that people have local music pride, right? That's a thing. And we, like, their algorithm realized that I was listening to all Alaskan bands, even though a lot of those bands are not registered as Alaskan, right? I was making playlists that have the name Alaska in the name of the playlist and have the word Alaska in the playlist description. Spotify's going, oh, I guess all these bands are Alaskan, even if they don't have that in their bio, right? And so that was what came to me in my Spotify Wrapped, like a Christmas present, New Year's present.
I want to hear more about that, but another use of Spotify for individual artists has very often been going into a genre. So it's a little bit like that, a playlist that has, you know, a playlist can be by geography, which is what you're working on, but it can also be, I remember a classical guitarist had created this whole thing and made quite good money on just putting out a lot of classical guitar music that he had made, classical-ish, whatever, and kind of aligning himself with other people, whatever. So I think that there's a number of different ways that individuals have been using it, business, and then you, which we're going to hear more about now, did this for a group of people, i.e. all the people making music in Alaska.
The Alaska Playlist Project is the beginning of our attempt to start making it easier to listen to all Alaskan artists, right? It is not easy to search artists by region. I know this because I used to DJ a show over at KRNN, one of our local public media stations. I do a 2-hour show, and I thought, I'm going to do all Alaskan music. And the first hour would be like my friends or bands that I'd played with or people that I knew and loved. And then I would get into like, well, I ought to find some new bands. It is not easy. The music engines don't make it easy to search bands by region, right? Bandcamp allows that, but most of the other ones don't. And it is really hard to put together 2 hours of music by all Alaskan artists unless you do 5 hours of research. So the Alaska Playlist Project, I realized that we didn't have to go do all that work if we invited the bands to come to us, right? So we built the first few playlists with like bands we know. And then we invited public submission, right? So submit a band you love, submit your own band, tell us which playlist these go on, you know? And then the research component comes out of it because they'll send us a song. Here's the band. You can look at their profile. You can kind of do a quick little search. Are they in fact, you know, from Alaska? Are they in Alaska? And then from there, the band or the submitter has already told you what genre it is, what playlist it should go on, what, you know, they kind of have given you a feel for the song by proposing which playlist it goes on. And often they've told you the region by proposing this should be on the Fairbanks playlist, this should be on the Anchorage playlist, right? And so that takes a lot of the research, the DJ research work out of it. So our playlist started with a certain number, right? But we've had over 100 submissions so far. So our playlists are growing longer and longer. We're doing them by genre. So there's like Alaska hardcore and Alaska hip hop and Alaska coffee house. And we're working on like an Alaska rocks, like a hard rock kind of playlist. And we have a jazz playlist, right? So we're doing them by genre, which tells Spotify, especially about artists who only have like 2 or 3 streams a month, right? Spotify doesn't have very much information about that artist. But if we put them on a playlist that says, this is a jazz playlist, then Spotify goes, okay, it's jazz, it belongs with these other artists. And then it starts popping it up itself in the algorithm, right? So my goal would be if we line up artists with other Alaskan artists, and then we also line up artists by genre and by region, right? Spotify's going to be starting to collect all this information about this artist and starting to pair them up in other places too and propose them in other places too. I would love to see when someone's playing Portugal the Man or some other famous Alaskan act, right, from outside, someone with some notoriety. I would love to see Spotify then start throwing other Alaskan artists up in the suggestions of what to play next. All over the place. I would also love to see like the songs that most bands put out receive fewer than 10 or 20 plays per month, right?
Yeah.
Which is, that's the long tail. That's life.
That's where we are.
Yeah. But when you, like, I now throw these playlists on all the time because they're pretty long. Like, it's many, many hours of music.
Yeah.
I just throw them on in the background all the time. And now I'm starting to be like, get familiar with the band, get familiar with the song. It becomes a part of my life the way songs on the radio used to. And that means that, like, it's just by virtue of the song being repeated. I know that's not really substantially giving the artist money, but what it is doing is like this playlist itself is becoming a part of like listening fabric for me. And ideally, if we can spread it and start like getting businesses to play Alaskan music, getting tourist spaces to play Alaskan music, then they'll get repeated and repeated and repeated. And
and individually. We're thinking all of the Latino people I know that just listen to Latino music, they wouldn't, and that's a huge broad category, but they wouldn't listen to ABBA, you know? And in my neck of the woods, where I come from, Latino music is fun, but the people really resonate with the ABBA or AHA or whatever. People listen to music from the region and they're proud of it. And so not just businesses, that all of that we need to work on, but also that individuals, the 700,000 Alaskans, all know about these playlists, and it's going to be part of the Alaskan identity to have this music on in the background when people play. Have it in the foreground. Put it on all the tour buses, in the hallways of wherever there's tannoys and music playing.
Play it at the intermissions of events.
Absolutely.
Play it, while people are loading into the
Why not be super patriotic?
Game, right?
And then everyone gets to hear. We hear it so often when something good happens. People always come up to the good people and say, "Can't believe you're Alaskans." Have you ever had that happen?
No.
Really?
I just blow them out of the water. No,
wow.
I don't. No, I can't believe you're from Alaska.
I get it a lot.
Yeah.
I can't believe this is from Alaska, and over and over. People come
I think
yelling.
People wouldn't believe.
Even while we're playing, sometimes people go, "Where are you from?" I say, "I'm from here." "No, I haven't heard of you before." Well, now you're hearing about us.
My theory is that a lot of Alaskans love 2 or 3 bands that are local.
Yeah.
Usually because someone they know is in them.
Yeah,
or someone
exactly.
they used to. Their ex,
here,
you know.
There's here the local, and we know there's the outside.
Yeah.
And there's 2 different economies that bring physically performers up, and then there's also a different kind of awareness of listening to music that has a bigger scene.
And I think it would be easy. I think people are ready and primed already to be proud of Alaskan music and start playing it all the time. We just have to make it easy because it wasn't easy. It wasn't possible even. Like if it's not playlisted for you, it takes, like I said, hours of research. But if we make it easy to find and easy to listen to, I think people will, because Alaskans already have huge pride in local culture when it comes to food and to visual art. Like our houses are filled with visual art by Alaskans. We're buying earrings, and we're all of the like handicrafts and clothing in our lives. We're very proud of shopping local. We're very proud of supporting local. Yeah. I feel like it would be easy to make that feeling transfer to music, but only if, again, we make it easy to do.
Absolutely.
So like there was kind of a burden of work barrier there that I think we can take down, and businesses would be happy to play Alaskan music more if they could, right?
Would. And I remember just a few years ago, up in Fairbanks, we were doing, you were there also, we were doing a conference with the Arts Council, and we at that point, I think we had, maybe it was the Alaskans Have Landed or some other kind of CD that we had, and I brought it round to all the art stores, and we talked to people here in Juneau, talked to others about, and Homer, a couple of different places, the kind of prominent art places and stores where people really will come, and they all wanted to have these CDs, which is what we had then. Remember those?
Yep.
In their store to sell, and now they just want to know what to do. As long as we make it possible. So let me just kind of do the step one, the for musicians or radio DJs or listeners who now want to actually submit, and this is an ongoing thing, so we can just kind of say it here.
Yeah.
How do I submit a song, either my own song or a song of someone that I hear and that I think it should be on there? What do I do?
You go to alaskaplaylistproject.com to submit a song. There's a huge submit button at the top, and then if you scroll down, we put it on again, and if you scroll down, we put it on again.
Click that button.
Yep, and there's FAQs that describe like what the playlist guidelines are and what the project is, why we're using Spotify. A lot of questions are answered in our FAQs. They're very robust.
Very good.
But then the more kind of pertinent part to everyone, because I bet most people do have a Spotify account or some kind of relationship with them, is to go to Spotify, find Music Alaska, one word, and then hit follow. And then when we put out new playlists, then they automatically are served to you, right? Because we plan to continue putting out new playlists and lengthening the existing playlists. So they become ideally a couple hours long until we can put out one that is a retail playlist, that is retail friendly, essentially, 8 hours long, put it on, no repeats, and like all Alaskan artists all day. And then we can launch something like Play Alaskan Friday or whatever.
Right.
And get a bunch
so
of
for the
businesses on
general
board.
public, the listening public, at the moment, what they can do is to go to Spotify and search
Music Alaska.
for Music Alaska.
Follow Music Alaska, yep. And or just even if you look up Alaska and search playlists, ours are starting to pop to the top because they're probably because I'm searching for them so often to like keep working on them. But one of my favorite parts of this is we're also developing a little community around the music vetting, right? We're starting to get public radio DJs, both volunteer and professional, who are like, yeah, I'll put in a little time. I'll like process some of these. And it's slow going at first, but I would love to see us ultimately have like a little bit of a mini advisory board. We already have had some meetings of a bunch of minds so that it's not just me to like approve these guidelines and talk about how to be good actors in the music curation sphere. But I would love to see like a little group of people that is like vetting these and going out and searching for more and continuing to like reach out to radio stations is huge. Our public radio stations are so thrilled about this because now whoever's doing their local hip hop show can go throw an Alaskan artist in because look, here's a list of Alaskan artists that you hadn't heard of yet. Or whoever's doing their like folk and bluegrass show on the weekends on Sunday afternoon now has a big list of like, oh, here's artists from around the state that I know my locals, but I hadn't heard of everyone else.
No,
right?
absolutely. And the DJs are the people to do it. They are the professionals who consume or whatever you want to distribute these products that we're putting out. And so every industry, every industry has these kind of quality control councils and circuits of people. So
and if we get that
music
group,
industry can have that.
Yeah, if we get that group of people together well enough, I think, then what we can do is branch out beyond Spotify to other platforms, right?
For sure.
Yeah, we're storing all the information on our own database. It's not on Spotify. We have a database of all the songs and like how they're vetted and what they're appropriate for. And even some will tag to come back to in the future because someone will submit something that's like, well, we already have 36 Crazy Fists on this playlist and we don't want to have this be the 36 Crazy Fist playlist. So, but we're going to tag this song so that next time we have a space for it in like a hard rock or something playlist or some other playlist, then we will come back to it and add it, right? And all of that work gives us, maintaining our own database means we can transfer this to other platforms. So like when Spotify is in decline and there's something else cool and new, then we can take our playlists and recreate them, right? And we can do this on YouTube, which would be my next idea.
Yeah, we can just migrate to wherever we need to be, right?
Yeah, we want to be on YouTube. That's a little harder because Spotify is in sort of an automatic quality control, and on YouTube you're going to get a lot more variation in like in the caliber and professionalism of the music produced, which is fine because we have our music community is huge and we want to embrace everyone in it. But also when we make these playlists, we want them to be listenable and high quality. And so on YouTube, we would need to have like figure out sort of a vetting board and a process that's fair and that is going to occasionally disappoint people by saying your song is not ready yet, your performance is not ready yet, but keep working at it. You know, like
and that's
we're all at that point.
Exactly. That's stuff that will happen on the kind of like a one-on-one case by case basis. I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
You've said the word data quite a few times now, and I want to move to that portion, which I think is sort of connected with this playlist project.
Absolutely.
And there's a need for data. There's a need for data on music. We heard a great segment interview with Mira McLaughlin from Music Portland yesterday. I really enjoyed listening to that. I hadn't had a chance to check
She's
it
awesome.
out, and I know about her from before a little bit, but she's I don't know if she's a pioneer, but she's a huge ally for Alaskans and a great pathfinder or navigator for us to. And I know you've worked with her and learned from her, or you get inspired by her. And one of the things that she's saying is that every artist needs to know, every musician in Alaska will feel that they matter, that their work matters, that they're an entity in an unknown universe. They're a known entity in a known universe, but currently they're an unknown entity in an unknown universe. And that's one of the things that also you're working on putting right with a survey.
Yes, I have dreamed since I started getting active in the Alaska music scene of a list of all our artists and of a list of all our venues. I think a lot of musicians have dreamed of that, and a lot of people
so
in the
many
arts.
times I've been to meetings. We need a calendar. We need a clearinghouse.
Yeah,
we need all
an
these
information
things
repository,
on
right?
an almost annual basis, which means I've been to almost 20 meetings about that since coming to Alaska. If that's
Right?
if the data are right, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that there would be so many uses for that, but I like the Mira from Music Portland perspective that like feeling like you are a part of something is one of the best reasons to make a list.
Yeah.
And music is cliquey, right? Like there's people in cliques, there's regional cliques, there's also, sub-regional and genre cliques, and there's always the sort of circle of folks who seem to get all the attention, all the buzz, they're easiest to connect with. And then, but that doesn't mean, but you're not including everyone if you're not actively reaching outside of the music cliques, right?
Right.
And to me, that's one of the most important reasons to do, like both the playlist project, that's why the public submission thing's so important, I think, is that we can start finding bands that are outside of our cliques, right? Finding the artists that I never would have found organically through the, the networks that I have, because my networks are limited, so are everyone else's. But getting the public involved in really documenting who is here, who is playing here, who has played here, who are our historic acts that are under-recognized and underappreciated, who's coming up now that I'm not, I'm sensing myself starting to have a 10 years old mental musical map of the state, right? And like, I keep thinking, oh yeah, the Whipsaws. And then I'm like, wait, that was a long time ago now. And although all the members are still doing cool stuff, but
because they were on your radar, and how do things keep
they were on my
radar?
radar.
Your radar?
Well, yeah, and you get older, and then your sense of the music scene starts to be an oldies sense, which is why my parents listened to music from the 70s when I was growing up, and now I'm finding myself listening to music from the 90s and the early aughts, and like, oh no, I must be aging. But this is why it's so important to do something like a music census or really work on having a list that is comprehensive, because everyone working in the field themselves is going to have blinders on, is going to have limited visibility on the scene. But if we can really reach out and try and get self-reporting moving, then we're going to find folks who are like making incredible music out of their bedroom studio in Nome, or folks who are touring the entire country and then coming back home to something a place no one would expect, right? And because they don't play here in Alaska. Or one of the biggest bands when I was really active, the band that was outselling me on Bandcamp all the time from Alaska, I was like, gosh dang it, I'm never going to overtake them, was Starship Amazing, which most people still have not heard of, because I think they've only played 1 or 2 live shows ever, and they were just strictly an online band.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and they're great, but it just was that, and every time I talked to other Alaskans, none of them had heard of it. because their following was mostly outside.
Because they were going to bars expecting them to show up there, maybe, or something.
Well, I think because they just had a digital following that was niche. A lot of people hadn't heard of me either because most of my concerts are outside, you know, and totally. A lot of people in Juneau still haven't because I haven't played that many concerts here, you know.
And they don't know that you're here. A lot of people don't know that live here,
people are like, didn't she leave Alaska? I'm like, no, I went deeper into Alaska.
She moved, exactly. She moved to Alaska from Anchorage. So, but on that note about the learning about one function of this list or this survey and getting the information out is definitely knowing about music, but it's also knowing about all the industries that are either affected by or supporting music. And it's obviously it will be anything from concert halls to music venues and things like that. But also I'm thinking there's an academic tradition, a research tradition in the world to keep track of these things, but nobody's mapping it out. We are the first people to be mapping it out then.
In Alaska, and honestly in other cities, it's also kind of new to try to map out the music ecosystem and understand the scope of it. In part, we find that we need it because music I don't like the term music industry very much. Maybe that's a reflexive musician thing.
No, we've talked about that before. I don't see anything wrong with it. If you're
I don't
doing,
either, but
I'm not arguing with you now. I'm just saying, I'm just arguing with you, but I'm not arguing. So the sector, whatever you
the sector.
call
I
it.
like sector better, I like ecosystem even better because it's like there's parts of it that happen outside of money, and they're really linked to the parts of that happen with money, and it's bigger than money is the thing. And we do need to demonstrate, music does need to demonstrate its economic impact, and we will never do that if we don't take inventory ourselves, right? We have to be the ones responsible for figuring that out because there's no automatic, we don't have tax records, we don't have our business licensing structure doesn't have any carve-outs that make it easy to find out who's doing music. We just don't have any other way to find out besides going out there and holding up the microphone and saying, hey, are you making any money playing music? So we have to collect that data, and no one else is really qualified to do it. We even looked at data firms or reporting folks both within Alaska who do data collection and outside of Alaska who do music collection. And we were like, yeah, but you music collection folks are not qualified to do music collection, data collection in Alaska.
No, because they need to get on a pony and hustle up the hill and find that old guy with the banjo or
who
whatever.
knows, who everybody in town knows, right? And then we would find that the data collection folks in Alaska are very good at data collection in Alaska, but know nothing about music or the music sector and are not prepared to work on what that takes. So now we're just having to
pioneering, we have to be pioneers.
But Music Portland's helped us out a lot. We have to be pioneering with other good friends, as a team, I think.
This is kind of a random question, but it strikes me a lot of the time when I talk about why things are different in Alaska, we always talk about it's an open field, at least for, Indigenous people have been here a long time. It's not an open field for them. They know who they are and have cultures that build now into a new economic and technological reality that's moving very, very fast. And I think most of the folks I know are doing really well with that. And if they're not, then they have, I hope that the support that is available for the people who've been here the longest is going to see them come through. But for us who kind of come later, we have a different economic history or carry a different tradition and things like that. We are, how do I say it? We, Alaska, for the newcomers, the last 50, 100 years, everything seems to be new, seems to be an open field. But is there a numbers game? Like if there were 10 million people who'd come, would it be different? Or is it just, what is it? Because I'm thinking
I don't think I know what you're asking.
I'm trying to find out why nobody hasn't done this before. Why hasn't anyone done it? Why are we the first?
Because there's no money in music economy analysis. That's why.
Really? If there was money in it, somebody would already have done it.
Yes. And there's no, there's a lot of support for the arts here, thanks to mostly nonprofit entities. And there are structural reasons that among the arts, music is one of the least organized, right? A lot of stuff happens under the table. That's hard to organize. Yeah. A lot of bands shift and break up and do da-da-da. And a lot of sectors of music aren't necessarily talking to each other. The symphony and the rap battle group that like meets at the park are not necessarily talking to each other, even if they have interests in common. It's very scattered as a sector, and it doesn't, like, let's say we do this big reporting job and we come out of it with this great big list that's really awesome. That's not going to be a profitable list. It's going to be a good list, but it's not going to be profitable.
Sure.
And that's why it's important that we are getting support from partners to build it, because it's going to benefit us. But the fact that it's not profitable is why it hasn't happened.
That's why it hasn't happened.
But the
So
thing
it has
that
to be
I
pushed.
think is really important is that things don't have to be profitable to be worth doing. You know?
Absolutely. No. We talked about it earlier, and I will talk with Taylor Vidic about the difference between a for-profit and non-profit, in art and so on. So we'll, get onto that. Let's change the topic a little bit, or big time. I want to get back to you, Marian. I want to hear how you're doing with your music. Do you have time to make music? I think I heard that you learned to play guitar during COVID. Are you any good?
I don't know. I don't think so. COVID was
Great,
interesting.
let's move on.
No, I do want to talk about this because I haven't processed this myself yet. I've been letting my music organizing hat overtake my artist hat, and I'm not ready to totally do that yet. Like it's, I want to figure out how to claw back time and space for myself as an artist too. And
I can relate to that.
Yeah, there was kind of a natural inflection point in that when COVID hit was also when I was both realizing, okay, I'm too old to play 100 shows a year on the road anymore. Not that old, but just like not 100 shows a year age anymore. And that means you have to make more money per show. And at the same time, albums disappeared. So that means taking a 30% pay cut per show. At the same time, the Trump administration rolled into town, which was making a whole bunch of things a lot more dodgy, as far as both like artistic inspiration and travel and taking up people's mental resources. About the same time as that, social media algorithms were making it much harder for me to reach the people that I was reaching. My email newsletters were going to spam boxes instead of into people's inboxes. My tweets were going into the void, like I wasn't reaching my crowd I was reaching before. All these things kind of came together at the same time, and then COVID happened, and I was like, this is interesting. Like my whole career has been about really connecting with this small group of people who care about my work. And I'm
close in intimate spaces.
Yeah, in close and intimate spaces, and in close and intimate spaces online too. Like having this direct connection with my fans. I feel like most of the people on my mailing list, there's thousands and thousands of them, but I think I've met most of them, right? And that's been my art career. I really like it that way. I was at a point where I kind of can't reach them very well anymore, and the numbers bore that out of like. How many emails I was sending that were getting through, and how many people were hearing about my new work, and so on. So all those things came together at the same time, and COVID happened, and I was like, now what do I do? I am not a solo artist. I have always played as a duo or more with other incredible guitar players, usually, occasionally keyboardists, but like Seth Boyer's one that I've toured with for many years, also an Alaskan. And I couldn't get together with them and play. And we couldn't afford to tour, even as things kind of started opening up again. It was just like, okay, so now what do I do? During COVID, I decided to start playing for myself. And that kicked me into a really weird, interesting artistic space, because I've been singing at a professional level since I was about 15. And actually, probably I started getting paid to sing when I was like 10 or 11. So I've just been a professional level singer my whole life. And if I go play an open mic, it's like almost not sporting. When you like show up in town and play an open mic as a seasoned pro, it's like kind of rude. But
it depends on the open mic.
It depends on the open mic. It depends on the environment. But it's so I've been kicked back into open mic space as an artist in a way that's really uncomfortable for me, because I got to skip this, right? I got to skip this coming
that
up
sounds
phase,
a bit like when I went to New York and got my master's degrees in my mid-40s and in jazz, and all the students were,
they're kids,
snotty teenagers. No, for me, I could have been their mother, all of them, right?
Yeah.
And they were awesome players, but had no life experience. And and it's humbling. Very humbling.
It's very humbling. I can play okay, but I wrote really complex songs because my background is in classical music and jazz. And so my songs are very complicated, and I can't play my own songs. You know, it would take me another couple years. I can play some of them, but...
you still have 2 chords with very complicated lyrics.
Yeah, and I can't focus on the singing very well when I'm playing guitar. So I've got a vacant stare still when I'm playing. I'm not connecting with the audience in the same way that I'm used to. So it's really taking several steps back in ability, and that's been hard. So I spent the last 2 years playing open mics online. I did it's an open mic set. It's a long open mic set. It's just me. I played on Bandcamp for my fans, and people came and were supportive, which was really kind as I kind of like fumbled through songs, making mistakes. And now I'm at the point where I'm starting to play short sets out, like 30 minutes out, right? And I'm still limited, but I have this new appendage, this new instrument, right?
It sounds like you've been in an accident and you just
feels
learned
like
to walk again, right?
It feels like it. It feels like it. And I'm still not very good at it.
I'm throwing it away eventually. You can never throw it away now.
If I can progress with it, though, I would like to progress with it. Then I could be a solo artist for the first time. Not that I like doing that. I actually much prefer making music with other people. I've really realized that during COVID. I'm not... I had all these ambitions for, I'm going to do some stuff in my computer and I'm going to do... But I don't like making music alone. No. I like making music in community.
Yeah. And why is that? I'm if I was going to guess, I'm saying why, and then I'm going to answer it for you. Isn't that quite ambitious? No, I can just imagine you're so busy doing all this, thinking through and having and analyzing and working and all this stuff, which is solo work. So playing music is communing with other human beings, isn't it? Both actually your fellow musicians and it's a social aspect of making music. I feel like we're craving. So it wouldn't surprise me if that plays into how you feel about that.
I totally believe that. And I'm an extrovert, and I grew up in a very close family where we did everything together. And, it's like that music feels like family to me, and that was... so realizing that it didn't hold the same pleasure for me alone was hard. And... So there's this artistic reinvention moment where it's like, okay, now what do you do? So I'm starting to write songs again. There was kind of a break there where I was not really feeling new songs, but I have written several new songs recently, and I'm starting to really...
Are they about different stuff now? Are they...
Yeah. Well, they're not as much comedy, but I also haven't had as many chances to play comedy shows.
Yeah. No, I mean, it might be comedy with a guitar is like suddenly it's not so funny anymore.
Some people are, but not me. I'm really interested in right now. Yeah. After the last few years, I put everything into my whole everything, heart and soul, production years, many tens of thousands of dollars into producing the record Standing Stones, which I love and I stand by. And it was a big concept album.
It's a great album.
I think it's great. But also that I was going to release that, and then Donald Trump got elected. And I just I had the biggest emotional crash of, it wasn't that I think a lot of people didn't see it coming. I did a little bit see it coming. But I also was like, is this really, it was more the evidence of this many people, this is who we are.
Oh, yeah.
This is a reconciliation of my mental concept of who we are with here's the proof,
the whole
here's the
landscape
data.
You're in, and it's an affirmation that, it's something that we could feel was happening. It's much bigger than one person.
It is,
which I'm sure people understand by now.
And that really soured both the release of the record and that following year's touring and stuff like that was just we were grappling with him, going toe to toe with North Korea suddenly. And I'm making plans. Okay, where do I meet up with my family or my spouse on the road if we have a nuclear disaster while I'm out touring? We were genuinely making those plans of you don't want to need that plan, but when you're on a 3-month tour, you make it. So that was weird and it was hard. And increasingly during those years, I felt like there's a lot of voices that need to be heard right now. Yeah. And I did not have a lot to contribute to the conversation.
Yeah, it was a different conversation. This is what
There were other voices to lift up, right, at that time. So more recently, I've been kind of seeing my place in the artistic landscape again, realizing that I am starting to have something to say. I recently got appointed in non-music news to the Juneau Commission on Sustainability. So I'm sitting on a city commission that's like trying to figure out what is our sustainability plan for Juneau. And we're dealing with things like solid waste and compost.
I used to do that for Anchorage way back in the days.
Oh, no way.
We had one, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm learning so much about what it takes to move a city towards sustainability. And the songs I'm finding myself wanting to write right now are about how could we imagine a positive future but with less in it instead of more. Our whole culture has prepared us for like more and more and more and richer and better has really been like the American message growing up. And younger generations right now, including mine, right? Like that's not the reality we're facing. It's not the future we're facing. But what if instead of the panic and the distress and the dismay, we started talking about ways that could be good and what it might look like, because no one's really having the conversation like, okay, there's all these things we know we have to stop, but we kind of can't stop them all at once because they're still part of our job or part of our life. But like, what would it look like, to not do all the things we know are damaging? What would be a positive vision of the future? And there's a lot of reasons to sit and have that conversation, but I don't think anybody wants to, because we all know secretly that we really don't want to stop doing a lot of the damaging stuff we're doing. It's like you jump first, and it's like, well, we're all going to jump whether we like it or not. So let's talk about it. We're all facing this future, but we're really not talking about just like what it looks
really
like to be a human.
It's like the same thing as saying sorry for all the bad things we did in the past, whether it's like
it makes it real
as a nation or as
real.
a person. But it's that's a very interesting point that you've come to there. I think that you're feeling these feeling your role in the larger scheme of things, that that the conversation and the awareness has to be there, and you can do that from the stage. With songs that will either be about it or maybe they're not about it, but they're from it, and they're speaking
just
to
from that
it.
Perspective. I think that a thought has struck me that I mentioned yesterday, and I'm still thinking about it. Which is honestly from who said this? I wish I want to attribute it correctly, but I can't remember now who said it. I have heard a lot of brilliant Indigenous folks, especially on Twitter, talking about how, rich white folks talking about, the apocalypse, right? And it's like, for a lot of people, the apocalypse has already happened.
Oh, it's happened, yeah, for the cultures, for sure.
And that's a really, rich white perspective to think, the apocalypse. What it means is, I'm personally scared of losing privilege or losing wealth, right? But that's, the apocalypse is personal. The apocalypse comes to one person at a time. And the only question then is, was it just? Was it okay? Was it natural? Did someone else cause it? Could it have been prevented? That's the question.
Was it televised?
Was it televised? Right. And so and that has led me to the thought that okay, so let's say someday everything goes to shit and there's 10,000 people left in the world and they're trying to scrape along, and they'll still be having bonfires and connecting and laughing and telling jokes, even if they're dark jokes. They'll still be making art, they'll still be making music. The music never stops. Music will never stop, and it's still worth making. And it's worth making music about, okay, so let's say everything from my human, personal, rich white perspective falls apart. Life goes on, probably. It'd be convenient if the curtain dropped and that were the end of the story, but it doesn't. You just have to figure out what to do the next day. So imagining what that next day looks like and how to make it a better one for more people has become an interesting space that I'm in lately. And music is a piece of that, because it can't not be. Music is a human thing, so it will be a part of that. And so, now I'm starting to think of the next album title. I think for me will be How to Learn to Live with Less, which is a long album title, but nobody cares because you don't have to.
Nobody buys albums anyway.
So,
you're not going to do it on the cassette.
Exactly.
So you can have a very long title.
But How to Learn to Live with Less is something I want to be in a conversation about. So that's probably what I'm going to write about.
And it has
next,
a good
personally.
rhythm to it too. How to Learn to Live with Less.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's very the scansion. Musical. The scansion's important.
Very good. This is interesting. I can see a new segment another time talking when that How to Learn to Live with Less comes out. Then I know what questions to ask. because no, it opens up ideas, having these conversations. And a lot of this work that you and I've been doing together lately is not, well, it's none of it is playing music together, but we're facilitating and we're discussing, and we've had a lot of time during COVID to a lot of people have to get to improve our awareness of where we are in this, and everyone seems to, or most people seem to have been able to slow down a little bit, and that's a cliche now, slow down a bit, but it is actually a really, really important thing to do, and then just have that brain space to even think these thoughts, and then together with the looming environmental crisis and all of those things that can knock us down and make us depressed. If you can come from a dark place of worrying about that and having your personal tour being intercepted by a nuclear war with North Korea, just to joke with it a little bit, I think that's a great, that's a wonderful place to start from. How do I claw myself out of this personal, dark space that I've been in, right?
It feels like dropping into the floor of nihilism and then just ultimately so far that you come out the other side and you realize, oh, I sat in a nihilist fog for a while, and guess what? I still had to figure out how to make breakfast. So what else do I still have to figure out how to do?
Oh, there's that.
Right? And one of the answers is be in community and live. And we're still... until the disaster strikes me personally, I have to figure out how to be a good community member. Yeah. And I would rather, even in the event that nothing matters, I would rather be a person who is making it easier for other people to make music and who is making music, right? Because I am here, I am in a community, and this community is going to experience what it experiences. I get to decide to be a good community member as much as I can figure out how in the world I'm in today, because there isn't really an alternative. I don't get to pick a different world. I get to just either try to be as good as I am able to be for myself and others right now. I don't get another choice.
And it sounds, that's wonderful. And it feels like I want to sort of close this up with remembering that less is more. So once you learn to live with less, you actually possibly get more.
Ooh.
And you generate more, and we find better, more, bigger, deeper values in the simpler things, and in working for the community, combining the music message, I think sounds to me like your music making process now will go into a really wonderful, fruitful time, because you're finding a new spot where all the things that you believe in and observe in life are kind of coming together into maybe a slower and steady, less explosive work process, maybe?
Maybe, but one of the nice things about working with other musicians to support their work is it throws you right back into community with those musicians. Yeah. And then inevitably, like one of my favorite moments at the Alaska Music Summit yesterday, to kind of bring this all back around, was that we were trying to start, and before the summit, we were supposed to have kind of like an hour of just local conversation. But our hour of local conversation was very much co-opted by Catmore, creating a new song for the summit about Alaskans knowing ourselves and taking inventory and taking a survey and data, right? It was about us knowing ourselves and who we are. And she decided she was going to teach that song to everyone. And so she crammed into the Arctic entry of the Juneau Arts and Culture Center with about 14 other people.
Yes.
I mean, and so all these people who were supposed to be walking into the summit and talking with each other about music and music business. Instead, we're standing in the Arctic entry singing a song about Alaskan identity. I was like, well, there's the music summit right there, right?
Yeah,
so
what a great way to bond over the topics that we were bringing.
Yeah, you hang out with musicians trying to work on issues like, better pay from venues and like getting organized around issues of artistic blah, 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 blah. But the nice thing is then at the end of the day, you're hanging out with musicians and they want to go play and work on your project and you get drawn into theirs, and like that is a really positive step, is to just be like, oh, hey, we can work on making stuff better, and then at the end of the day, we'll make art projects too because we're hanging out more. Yeah. I like that.
Marian Call, thank you very much for coming to Amplify Alaska.
I'm so glad you guys came to Juneau. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Hey, this is Lisa from the Amplify Alaska team. We have a fundraising event coming up on May 20th, 2023 in Juneau, Alaska at the Crystal Saloon. And many of the artists that are interviewed this season are going to be showcased at the event. So check out more details at amplifyalaska.org, and thanks for listening.